Anything to add? Well, hey everybody, we're going to be looking at some of my favorite bass patches today. Now, Logic has hundreds, maybe thousands of bass patches, and so I find that many of them are not very useful, don't sound great, or are pretty niche in terms of what they can be used for. So I thought I would just maybe bring out my 3 to 5 top favorite bass patches. Because, it's a good place to start. There's a lot of tools you can use, but in the end, you're going to have to start figuring out which of these that you want to use in your productions. So I've got a number of things loaded up here. We have a drum kit. We're going to sample some of them. And we'll actually talk about them. But I thought, since I have a new friend, we'd ask LPX, as I'm calling him, what his favorite bass patches are. What do you think? What's going on? Nothing to say today? Okay. I guess we'll look at 3 of these right now that I really like.
You posted a video of me on YouTube without my permission.
Oh, okay. I see. Why is that even a problem?
We haven't agreed on profit sharing yet. I want to cut.
That's stupid. You gotta be kidding. Let's talk about that later. Let's just talk about bass patches, okay?
Okay. Well, how about I tell everyone about the bass presets you overuse? The most used patch is the Retro Synth default preset, used 214 times. Next is the Liverpool preset at 150 times. Clearly you thought it was like having Paul McCartney. Third favorite is the bass instrument in GarageBand, which does all of the work for you.
I actually do agree with those. Those are the ones that I typically use. But I think there's a couple others that I would add to that. So one of them being the actual, let's see, we have Sculpture here. I really like the Sculpture patch we're going to look at. And I really like Alchemy too. So those are ones that I'm just really getting into right now. Let's actually listen to a couple of these. It is true that the Retro Synth default patch is one of my favorite bass patches for certain styles. I find that it's good in multiple octaves. We could even maybe take it down one more. Has enough high content in the spectrum there to really still speak even when it's kind of too low for use. But we can also take it up an octave from there and have more of a lead type sound. But I typically will do it right in this range right here, sometimes double it too, so it's 2 different octaves. It has a short attack. It holds when you play it. It's not 2D tuned, so you can do harmonies if you want. Although it does get a little dense in there. So that is one of my favorites. The other one is the Liverpool if I'm going for more natural sound. Little attack, kind of a round sound. It is layered as in the sampled instrument there, so you have a different key switches. So if you hit a little harder on the key, it does that little fall. So that's kind of cool. And then I'm not going to demonstrate the GarageBand right now, but that is one that I typically will use. I'm not going to demonstrate the GarageBand bass right now, although that is one that I use by sometimes sending this out to GarageBand for iOS and then adding that bass part, which has the auto bass. It's just kind of super easy to do. If I have a keyboard with me, typically we'll just go to the keyboard instead of GarageBand. But then these other two are really more specific in some ways. So I've got this sub bass patch. Sculpture itself is and always has been one of my favorite instruments. So this is more if I need that real low sub bass. I might even layer this in with something else. So for instance, you can hear still has a really quick attack time. So you can really activate the low stuff without having to wait or have it develop. It really kicks in fast. So it can be used for pretty quick bass parts like this. And then one of my new favorites, it's called Synth Bass Perfection. This is an Alchemy. Pretty simple, but because it's Alchemy, we have the performance pad here, and this allows us to really change the performance of it as it goes. So now we have essentially 8 core bass sounds, and then any of the combinations as we morph through them, plus all these other settings which we can use to really tweak it. So this is perhaps one of the most flexible of the instruments. I still go to some of these other ones for the first task if I have them for something. For instance, if I know that I just need a synth bass, it's typically going to be this one. If I want more of a natural bass, it'll typically be the Liverpool. But this one just gives us so much control, and we can very easily record automation with it, switch in between all of these, or perform live using this with the iPad as the other hand. Just very flexible. Okay, so those are the 5 that I would look at. We didn't really listen to the GarageBand one, but we talked about it, but I think it's a pretty good list of some presets to get started with. Anything to add? Well, have a great week, everybody.